Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and greeting to everyone. I hope that everyone have a pleasant day today. So first and foremost, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the organizing committee of the 9th International Conference on Social Sciences, Humanities and Technology 2026 for providing this valuable platform for academic exchange and scholarly discussions. My name is Nurshina Fazali. I'm from School of Government University Utara Malaysia. And it's my pleasure to present our paper entitled Strengthening Governance Integrity Through E-Participation, the Role of Transparency and Responsiveness in Malaysian Local Government. So, public participation is no longer just a democratic idea, but it is an essential component of effective public demonstrations. In the past, citizens often viewed as a passive recipient of the public services, but today they are active stakeholders whose feedbacks and experience are vital for the policy formulation as well as decision making at the local level. The advancement of the ICT has transformed this public and government relationship through e-participation, which uses digital platforms to facilitate sharings, consultation, and collaborative problem solving. So these digital channels allow for more accessible and continuous engagement compared to the traditional face-to-face mechanism. So Malaysian local government have increasingly adopted these digital technologies as part of their digital transformative agenda. So today, citizens can engage with the local authorities through mobile applications, online complaint system, social media, and digital feedback channel. You can name it Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, as well as other digital platforms. So these platforms make it easier for the citizen to report issues, share suggestions, communicate directly with the local government agencies. So as a result, e-participation has become an important mechanism for increasing the citizen engagement. And this effort actually reflects the national aspiration toward the citizen-centered administrations. Although the government are investing in more digital technologies to interact directly with the citizens, but an important question still remains. Does more technology will lead to the better governance and greater public trust? This is what scholars have been referred to the paradox of participation. Because while the government gives more opportunity for citizens to participate through this various platform, meaningful engagement does not always occur. Citizens may submit complaints, may provide their feedbacks, or share their views online. But if they do not receive response, update, or evidence that their input have been influenced the government decisions, they may feel that their participation have been meaningless and discounted. So in other words, the issue is no longer about creating the opportunity for the public to participate, but the real challenges itself through the participation, whether produce the meaningful governance outcome. So when citizens perceive that their voice is being ignored, public trust can be declined despite this availability of the digital platform. So therefore, successful of e-participation or traditional participation is not measured by the number of platforms available, but by whether this platform is promote transparency, responsiveness, and meaningful citizen involvement in the governance. We know on the paradox of public participation. Same goes to e-participations. E-participation often promoted as a tool to improve communications between government and citizen. It has a great potential to increase inclusiveness, strengthen public service delivery, and support for more collaborative forms of governance. However, effectiveness of e-participation remains widely debated. In some cases, e-participation becomes performative rather than substantive, or more of a showcase rather than genuine engagement tools. So government can point to the Facebook page that they have, online portals, Instagram, advanced complaint system as the evidence that they prepare for the citizen participations. However, if citizens never see how their feedback influence decisions, participation becomes symbolic rather than meaningful. In other words, we can say the platform is existed, but the impact is missing. So as a result, participation becomes as one-way processes rather than a genuine partnership. So scholars have been argued that meaningful e-participation should go beyond information sharing or complaint management. Instead, it should support for the co-production element, where the citizens and public institutions work together to identify problems, develop solutions, and improve governance outcome. So we should say that e-participation crucial to have a value and effect. Same goes with the public participation. So this study therefore examines whether e-participation in Malaysia, local government especially, function merely as a communication tools or whether it contributes to meaningful governance through greater transparency and responsiveness. So this brings us to the concept of governance integrity. If e-participation implemented effectively, it can strengthen governance integrity by making governments more transparent, be more responsive and accountable to the citizens. Traditionally, we know integrity has been associated with preventing corruptions or the misconduct of the officers, such as misuse of power. However, contemporary governance literature suggests that integrity goes beyond that. So citizens often judge the integrity of public institutions based on how they are treated and how government responds to their concerns. For example, when complaints are addressed promptly, information is shared openly, and citizens receive updates on issues they have raised, government are seen as transparent and responsive. This experience helps build trust and strengthen perceptions of integrity. However, when complaints remain unanswered, feedback has been ignored, or citizens do not know what happened after they participate, they may perceive institutional apathy. Over the time, this can be reduced public trust and confidence in the government. So we can say that the quality of response, the quality of transparency in the government itself, it shows the integrity of the government. So therefore, integrity is not only about fighting the government, it's about ensuring government engage openly, respond to their concern, and demonstrate accountability in their actions. So this is why transparency elements and responsiveness are central to the study. As we can see in the current slide, this study focuses on two key pillars that connect e-participation to governance integrity. Okay, the first pillar is transparency. Transparency is more than simply sharing information online, but citizens want to understand how decisions are made, what action are being taken, and whether their feedback has been considered. In other words, transparency helps citizens to see what the government is doing and why it is doing it. The second pillar is responsiveness. So responsiveness refers to the government's ability to acknowledge citizen concerns, provide timely feedback, and take appropriate actions. Citizens are more likely to trust public institutions when they receive responses and see their concerns are being addressed. So together, transparency and responsiveness make e-participation meaningful. So they can transform digital platform from a simple communication tool into a mechanism that promotes accountability, trust, and governance integrity. So therefore, this study argued that value of e-participation is not determined by the technology itself, but how it effectively enhances transparency and responsiveness between government and citizen. So what I can say is that these two key pillars, which is transparency and responsiveness, is the bridge between the e-participation tools to the governance integrity. Using Alaska City Council as a case study allows us to move beyond the availability of digital platform and examine on how e-participation is actually experienced and implemented in practice. To achieve this study adopted a qualitative case study using and focusing on the Alaska City Council. So data were collected through the in-depth interview, which involved 24 participants, consisting 10 of local government officers and 14 citizens who have experience interacting with the local authority through the digital platform. Okay, the interview explored the participant experience, perception, and challenges related to the implementation of e-participations. So rather than focusing solely on the technology, the study sought to understand on how this platform is functioning in practice and the issue encountered either by the local authority as a provider and the citizen as the end users. So the interview data analyzed using SSTI, and this approach enabled the identification of recurring themes and patterns regarding implementation of e-participation and the user of e-participation. So challenges that may affect its effectiveness in supporting the governance outcome. So we don't ask how about transparency and responsiveness in e-participation platform provided by the local government, but we ask what is the challenges, and then the transparency and responsiveness element is highlighted by these two of the participant group. So, one of the key findings is what I call the transparency gap. Citizens told us that it is quite easy to submit the complaints or feedback through the digital platform. However, once the complaint enters the system, the process becomes a black box. So in simple terms, black box refers to a process that cannot be seen or understood by outsiders. Citizens know what they put into the system, but they cannot see what happened inside it. They do not know who handles their complaint, what actions are taken, whether decisions are made, or whether their feedback has any influence on the outcome. So many participants report receive little or no status updates and were often uncertain about the final outcome of their submissions. So as a result, participation may feel symbolic rather than meaningful because citizens cannot see the impact of their involvement. So these findings suggest that transparency is not about providing information or creating digital platform. So it's about opening these black box by making the process visible, communicating the progress, and explain the decision, and showing citizens on how their input contribute to the government's outcomes. In terms of responsiveness, although citizens can easily submit complaints or feedback through digital platform, many feel that the communication is only one way. Their messages reach the local authority, but they do not always receive acknowledgement, updates, or information about whether the issues have been resolved. As a result, citizens often feel that they are speaking into a system that does not respond. So over the time, this can reduce confidence in the platform as well as discourage the future participation. Okay, the findings suggest that challenge is not about lack the digital channel. Rather than challenge is ensure continuous communication between citizens and the local authority. So citizens expect not only to submit feedback, but they also want to receive response, updates, and evidence that action has been taken. So without responsiveness elements, e-participation will become a one-way communication rather than a meaningful dialogue between citizens and the government. So what is the main purpose to have e-participation if e-participation does not have any difference with traditional public participation? Therefore, the challenge is not getting citizens to participate. We have no issue to ask citizens to participate, but the challenge is ensuring that participation matters. So previous findings highlight two major issues: transparency gap and responsiveness void. Citizens could submit complaints, they could submit feedback because they have digital platform, but many were unable to see what happened afterwards and often receive limited responses and updates. So this situation will lead to what I describe as performative participations, because participation appears to be taking place because the platforms is existed and the citizens are encouraged. However, citizens cannot see how their feedback is processed, considered, or translated into action. So participation becomes more symbolic rather than meaningful. So as I shown in this slide, citizens provide input, but without transparency and responsiveness, they may begin to feel that their view is ignored and undervalued. So it creates the perception of intentional apathy, where government institutions appear to be listening but are not genuinely engaged with citizens. So the long-term consequences is decline in public trust and confidence. Citizens will become less motivated to participate because they do not see a clear relationship between their participation and government responses. In short, e-participation should not simply be about collecting feedback, but it could create a visible outcomes, meaningful dialogue, and a clear connection between citizen input and government action. Based on this finding, I argue that local government need to move from a performative approach to a substantive approach in e-participations. So a performative approach is largely on technology-centric. Success is often measured by system usage, a number of complaints received, or the availability of the digital platform. In terms of information, is disclosed through websites and portals, where communication also limited to the automated acknowledgements or generic response. So in contrast of a substantive approach is the governance-centric. The focus is not on the number of complaints submitted, but on whether the issue is resolved and whether citizens can see the outcomes of their participations. So this requires a greater transparency by making decision-making process is visible and outcome is also visible to the citizen. So it also requires a greater responsiveness through the actionable feedback, a meaningful engagement, and closing the communication loop. So ultimately, success of e-participation should not be measured by the existence of the technology, but the availability of the creating meaningful citizen-government interactions and strengthen public trust as well as enhance the governance integrity. Additionally, the findings suggest that, in line with the Malaysia Madani Agenda, local governments need to move beyond the technology-centered approach towards a more interactive and citizen-centered model of governance. The goal of e-participation should not be limited to the administrative convenience or just collection of complaints. Instead, it should facilitate meaningful interaction between governments and citizens through continuous dialogues, collaboration, and co-productions. This shift is also closely related to the governance integrity. Integrity is demonstrated when the local authorities operate openly, communicate honestly, and ensure that citizen concerns are genuinely considered the decision-making process. At the same time, accountability requires governments not only to make decisions, but also to justify those decisions and communicate their impact on the citizens and communities. Ultimately, the good governance element is achieved when e-participation serves the needs of citizens rather than merely fulfilling administrative requirements. Digital platforms should therefore be used not only to manage information, but also to strengthen transparency, responsiveness, trust, and meaningful citizen-government relationship. In short, the future of e-participation lies in creating the governments as it is interactive, accountable, transparent, and centered on the public interest. So, how we can operationalize integrity in e-participation. We focus on three main steps. Okay, first, we formalize the loop. This means establishing mandatory standard procedure with clear timeline to acknowledge, respond, and resolve citizen feedback. Participation should not end with submission of complaints or suggestions, but citizens must be assured that their voices entered a structured decision-making process. Second,